All right, so now we're going to start to talk about events. So I want to talk about the different types of mouse events that are available to us. And I also want to add just the functionality so that when we click this add new user button, that it actually adds a new user, which will be just hard coded for now. And then later on, we'll add a form so that we can add the data ourselves. All right, so let's start off by just going into our users component HTML and just adding an event to this button here. So it's the add user button. So to add an event in Angular, you want to just use parentheses and then the name of the event. So we're going to say click equals, and let's say that we want this to go to a function or method called fire event. Okay, and we can actually pass in the event with $ event like that. Alright, so we'll save that and then we'll go into our TS file and let's add that fire event. Okay, and then all we want to do here is take in the event that we passed in. So I'm just going to put an E here and let's console.log. Let's first of all just log anything. We'll just say button clicked. Alright, now in order to use this, actually, is it already enabled? It is. All right, so I clicked it and we get button clicked. Okay, every time I click it, that's going to happen. So it's as easy as that to wire up an event to an element and then create your function. So let's console log E and see what we get. So this is going to be the actual event that's passed in, and you can see it has just everything that a vanilla JavaScript event, on-click event would have. If we want to get like the mouse position, we can get the client X and client Y. If we wanted to get the ID or class or anything to do with that element, we could do that. What I'm going to do is just console log the type. So if I click, you'll see we get click because that's the type. So let's look at some of the other types. So we also have mouse over. Okay, so if I go and I just enter the button, you'll see we get mouse over. Every time I go out and come back in, we'll get that. We also have mouse down, or actually let's do mouse out. So every time I leave the button, we get that mouse out. Okay, we also have mouse down. So this works like a click, but it happens immediately when I click the mouse down. And then we also have mouse up, which is going to fire off when I have the mouse go up. So if I click and hold, nothing happens. When I release, we get the mouse up. Same thing with vanilla JavaScript. If you guys are familiar with regular events, then this should be quite easy to understand. We also have double click, so that's DBL click. So if I go ahead and I click once, nothing happens in the console. If I double click, you'll see we get the event type, which is double click. Okay, we also have drag. So if I go ahead and do that, and then I click and hold and I drag. Actually, that's not, there we go. All right, so you'll see as I move around, it actually calls it every time I move it. We also have drag over. So if I save that and I bring it over somewhere, actually that doesn't work. There we go. All right, you can see that's running every time I drag something over that element. And if I hold it there, it's going to keep running. So those are some of the mouse events. Now what I want to do is put this back to a click, and then I'm going to set this to a different method called add user. I just added the fire event just to give you some examples of the different types of events. But let's do add user, and it's going to take in a parameter. If we look at our component TS, we already have the function there, add user, which takes in a user and it just pushes it onto the array. So what we'll do is let's actually set show extended to false like that. That way we only see the names. And then let's go back to our add user and let's put in our first name. Remember, first name and last name are the only required fields. So we'll say Mary, and let's say last name, and we'll say Williams. And then I also want to add an is active, and we'll set that to true. Okay, every user that's added should be active by default. So we'll save, and then let's hit add user, and there she is, Mary Williams. Actually, let's change the last name. We already have a Williams. Let's do Jackson. All right, so add new user, and we get Mary Jackson. If I keep hitting it, it's just gonna keep adding Mary Jacksons. Now it's not going to stick, of course, because we're not persisting the data. The only reason these names are here is because we have them defined initially in the initializer, in the ng on init. Usually you would have this linked to either like local storage or some back-end API or something like that. But Angular itself is just the front end, okay? And we'll talk about HTTP and using backends later. I'll also show you how to implement local storage so that data can be saved in your browser. So in the next video, what I want to do is I want to make it so that we can show and hide the extended info for these users individually. So we'll have an icon we can click to show the extended data and close it and basically just toggle each one. All right, so that's what we're going to do in the next video.